Howdy guys, it's Sunday. Bloody Sunday. I've definitely had time to, I'm not going to call it stew. I haven't stewed. Um, I've definitely had a fair bit of time to reflect on this loss, 6-point loss to the Pies on Friday night at the MCG in front of 88 odd thousand screaming fans, and it's a magical place to be when the game is close. It really is, and the Pies got the chocolates, and they fully deserved that win. I think the scoreline, for the most part, probably flattered us. However, that's football. That's football, and if that was a final, and it felt like, given the pressure that Collingwood have applied, I'll get to that shortly. If that was a final and they won by 6 points, or we were able to somehow manufacture a goal late in that game when Harry had that kick inside 50, and it was an elimination final. There's no next week. There's no next week for the loser. It doesn't necessarily matter how you win in an elimination final. So there's next week. There's a fair bit still to play out in this season, a lot, in fact. And maybe it's somewhat of a soft review, given the nature of this channel, the history of this channel. And maybe the negativity of this channel, which I'm quite happy to put my hand up. I think a lot of that over the period has been warranted, but I think for the most part, with this team and this current group, and I know that we haven't tasted the ultimate, and I know we are somewhat inconsistent. I'm not throwing him under the bus. I'm not getting carried away with a 6-point loss. And I didn't necessarily leave that ground. Oh man, I was disappointed. Of course I was disappointed. Wasn't so much disappointed in the fact that it was Collingwood that beat us. I was just disappointed that we lost. And we lost against a quality side, and there's no shame in that, losing against a really good football team. And Collingwood they're a super football team, and we were beaten by a super football team the week before, who got beaten by Melbourne last night. So I'm not going to overreact. I certainly aren't, and I learnt my lesson last year with this group. And I'm not saying we are in a similar position to what we were last year, where we went on that horror run of losses, where we just looked fucking really bad, and it got to a point there where it felt like the shit had really hit the fan, and I think all of us, or most of us, I shouldn't say all of us, most of us, we're happy to throw this group and this team and this club under the bus, and I'm not going there right now. I just can't. I refuse to. It's just not going to happen. I did receive a message off. Well, no, it wasn't a message. It was a response to one of my tweets about us looking really pedestrian and one-paced and slow through the middle of the ground, and someone responded, and I was happy. I mean, it wasn't a derogative response to what I was saying, but they basically said, "Honest opinion, Bucky, are we fucked?" And obviously a loaded question. And maybe rhetorical. I think I looked at it. This was yesterday morning. I looked at it and I couldn't respond. I just couldn't respond. The old me probably would have just overreacted and said, yeah, we're fucked. We're fucked. But I just think there are so many questions about our team and our coaches that just cannot be answered. They just cannot be answered at the moment, whether it's the immediate future going into next week's game against Melbourne or long term. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to try and get an understanding of a developing team. And unfortunately, that's what we are. That's what we are. You could say, should we be better? Should we be in a better position than what we are right here, right now? Of course, you could say that. It's been a long time waiting, for this group. But it just feels like we are still developing and we are still learning, and we are frustratingly at times reactive. But I'm not going to throw them under the bus, because I learnt my lesson last year with doing that. I'm not going to go there at the moment. It just would be ludicrous to do that. So I have had time to reflect. I went to the VFL yesterday. Carlton VFL team played Werribee here in Werribee at Churnside Park. It was a great day. Didn't get the chocolates. I'll do a review on that game, in particular our AFL listed boys who played in that game. I think there were maybe nine players that played in that game that I'll talk about. I was going to talk about it in this video, but yeah, I don't want to take away from Friday night's loss. But yeah, I will put a video out about our VFL performance against Werribee. 31-point loss it was in the end at Churnside Park. That will be out in the next couple of days. And there were some positives, I think, from an individual point of view that came out in that game. So maybe it's a soft review, maybe. And I will get to the players individually at the end of this video, but I must say, I know you look at your football team from a holistic point of view, but given Friday night's performance, and this might surprise some people, I'm giving a tick to our forwards. I thought we looked pretty threatening for the whole night. I know we only got goals out of 3 players, was it? Harry, Charlie and Owies chipped in. But I thought for the most part, I know it's not pretty at times with the way we enter that ball inside 450, and at times maybe our pressure wasn't where it should be at. I thought it was okay. I think it was a pass, and I actually give a tick to our backs. And I know the focus this week was on a defensive system across the whole board. But if you're talking about just the line, I reckon we got our matchups pretty right for the whole night. I know the isolation of Zach Williams on Jamie Elliott wasn't ideal. It was a bit of a head scratcher, if I'm honest. I think that was definitely planned to play Williams on Jamie Elliott. I think they thought the speed of Elliott. I'm not quite sure why. I think that was the one matchup that we didn't get right. It wasn't like Elliott really did a hell of a lot of damage, but it certainly put Williams under pressure and maybe not in a great frame of mind, and we didn't necessarily get a lot out of him offensively, but that was planned. And the thing that concerned me with that planning was Elliott always starts deep. Probably the starts the deepest of any of the Collingwood forwards. So they were quite happy to isolate Williams on him. And it didn't work. Although I know he's copped a fair bit and he's gone off injured and he's now probably going to spend some time on the sidelines. Being at the ground, I thought he fought back pretty well, Zach Williams. I know he made some mistakes, but I thought he fought back quite strongly after a really shaky start. So, yeah. But I think Lewis Young's copped a fair bit, copped a heap, and he's got so many deficiencies. He's so slow to get that ball on the foot, but we've got to go with him at the moment. We've got to go with him at the moment. But I didn't think he did an awful job on their two big fellas when they went forward, whether it was Cox or Darcy Cameron. And I know Cox had a couple of shots on goals. He kicked the goal, but I think he did his job defensively. Wiedering took, he took my check completely out of the game. And I think our mediums and our smaller type defenders, I think they probably walk off the ground holding their head relatively high. And I'll get to those individually shortly. But the area of the ground that we were, I don't want to use the word beaten up. No, fuck it, I will use the word beaten up. I mean, you look at the numbers, you look, okay, we've still won possessions through the middle of the ground, whether it was on the wings or the on-ballers. Just thought Collingwood planned so well. And it was being at the ground and watching those stoppages unfold time after time after time after time. You could just see how disciplined and how hard Collingwood worked and how selfless they were in around the ball to enable that ball to eventually get out to the outside, and that's where they done their damage. I don't want to give myself a pat on the back here, but I did think they would go in with one midfielder. I said it would be Lockie. Well, actually, he was already named when I did my preview, but I thought they would then go with Alex Murkoff, and then they would back their experienced players in the middle of the ground. And almost I thought they might concede in there in regards to clearances, but they went to work. And listening to Craig McRae's press conference after the game, and a lot of the stuff, I sort of brushed over, but there was one thing he spoke about, and he heaped a lot of praise on their midfield coach, Hayden Skipworth. And they've obviously knew that DeGoey and Mitchell weren't going to play. They knew that early on in the week. So they went to work. They went to work on a strategy to take away what is essentially our strength, or what's been our strength over the last few weeks. Pitnet in there, DeConning at times, but Cripps, Walsh, Hewitt, and then throw Chera in there as well. Decent clearance player. Got Kennedy, who started as a sub. We'll get to that. Don't worry about that. And they were quite happy to manhandle and corral Patrick Cripps and Sam Walsh at times. And I'm not saying we didn't get our hands on the ball, but they were disciplined, and they stuck to their task. They stuck to their fucking task the whole night, and they put guys in there who they knew would get the job done. So Pendlebury, Crisps, Akos, and then Lipinski played a role in there as well at times. So it was a masterclass of midfield planning against a team that on paper, us, clearly, and I mean clearly, had the upper hand, and they just was so patient and disciplined with the way they went about their craft and went about their work. They just knew if they could get the ball to the outside in that game that they could do damage, okay, and gain territory, which they were able to do, and put a lot of pressure on us. Their pressure around the ball, particularly after quarter time, was just relentless. They did not stop. And what it ended up doing for us, we just second-guessed ourselves for the whole night. Our midfielders couldn't get going. We were active. We looked slow. We looked under pressure. We made poor choices, whether it was by hand or by foot. We didn't give the first options. Our fundamentals were just slightly off. I do say slightly off because it is a game of inches, but that came down to Collingwood's pressure. And you can talk about game styles and game plans as much as you like, but that is our one wood. That is our one wood, and unless at the moment, because we have resorted back to that, unless we can get the game on our terms around the middle of the ground, and you can take that away from us, we can be quite a laborious football team. And that was on show on Friday night. Our ball movement was stifled. We couldn't get a lot of run. We went back to the old habits of booting the ball down, booting the ball down long and high. And it played just right into the hands of Collingwood for the whole night. And I must say, midway through that third quarter, Collingwood had pretty much dominated. I thought we had them. I thought they were tiring. I thought, it was so taxing on what they were doing. And look, Dacos was always a threat for the whole night. And one thing we do know about him is he can just go all day. And he played one hell of a game. When you could hit the scoreboard, kick the winner, and just break lines and almost tease us at times. He was exceptional. But I thought we had them. I thought they were tiring. And but they didn't. They regrouped at 3/4 time, and then they came again in that last quarter and really controlled that game for the first part of the last quarter. And really, let's face it, guys, they probably should have put a bigger margin on us than what they were able to do. And full credit to us once again. We found a way. We did find a way to score and get ourselves back into that fucking game to a point where, Jesus Christ, it was like we could potentially win this fucking thing. But I must say, when the scores were level and they did get territory, I was actually praying for a draw, and I know that would have been like somewhat unrewarding, but I think if we'd have got away with a draw in that game, it just, I don't know, it just would have felt for me like even that would have been lucky. And I would have taken it. I would have taken it to the bank. So when Dacos kicked that goal, I thought, that was just. That was just. The better team won. They beat us. They beat us almost at our own game in the middle. And what we do know about Collingwood, they do have those guys on the outside. So whether it was Murkoff, whether it was Noble, I thought was exceptional. Maynard, just their speed worried us for the whole night. And they're a pretty slick unit with their ball movement. And we weren't, talk about team defence, we still weren't able to control that part of the ground. And their tackling and their pressure was just off the charts for the whole night. And hats off to them. It is what it is. So that's where I'm at the moment with this team of ours. Who are we? How much more have we got to give? How much more have these coaches got in them to get the best out of this group? Will Gov, Sard, Martin, Marchbank, will they make this team better? We're just going to have to wait and see. We can't answer that right here, right now, because we've got a big fucking test coming up against Melbourne, who I thought were defensively excellent last night. And what Melbourne did to Geelong is they suffocated them. They squeezed the absolute fucking life out of them. And Geelong are a super team, and they could not handle that. And that's what Collingwood did to us. And then they got us where we are weak, where we are really, really weak. I thought bringing Cunningham in was actually the right move. I really did. I think he's the type of player that if we can get more out of, which is questionable because we just can't keep him on the park, that was the type of player that we needed to come into this game. So I think from a selection point of view, it wasn't horrible to bring someone like Cunningham in. It's just he doesn't necessarily do enough at the right times. So I'm going to go through the players right here, right now. I'll actually try and keep it as I suppose positive as possible. So I'll start with Lockie Cowan. I think he's showing some nice signs. I thought there was a great mark he took on the wing. He's a good size. I think that strength of his is really going to improve over the next couple of years. I think they like him. I think he's got a lot to offer. I don't necessarily think he's ready, fully ready at the moment, and we're playing him, which is okay. He's a second-year player. I think he's showed some promise. Whether we're getting enough run, though, from those medium-sized defenders, we're just not. It's as simple as that. We're not having a lot of damaging running halfbacks at the moment, and he probably falls into that category. And I think he's got it in him to do it. It's just not happening right here, right now. I thought Chera was probably reflective of our midfield group. We were second guessing ourselves. We looked slow. We couldn't necessarily hurt the opposition. We tried to do too much first option football. And that was due to the fact that Collingwood's pressure was absolutely elite. First game back after a little bit of time on the sidelines with a hamstring injury. I think we're just all waiting to see the best of Adam Chera, which hasn't come this year. Zach Williams, already spoken about him. Not going to go into a lot more detail. I thought it was a bizarre move to play him on Jamie Elliott in the first place, considering that they were always going to play Elliott deep. I thought it was a really bizarre move. Kennedy, it was a real surprise he started as a sub, but you got to take into consideration that we've got so many of those types in the midfield already. And I think that the most courageous thing would have been not to play Matthew Kennedy at all. Either start him on the ground and bite the bullet with him and really go really thick and deep with your midfield, or not play him at all. To start him as a sub, I don't think he was ever going to add a lot to that game. We needed someone to come into that game, and I think Ollie Hollands would have been, in that situation, would have been the perfect player to bring on late in that game. Not Matthew Kennedy. I didn't think he added a hell of a lot when he came. I'm not saying he wasn't, he had 4 touches. I'm not saying that's necessarily his fault that he couldn't get into the game in that last goal. I'm just thinking it was a bizarre move. Either not play him because we've got too many midfields of similar ilk, or start him on the ground. It just, not quite sure what the reasoning behind that was. It wasn't addressed, I don't think, in Michael Foster's press conference. Cripps, like Chera, just reflective. He just couldn't get going, and Collingwood, as they usually do, they just put time and effort into him. 2 on him at the stoppages. So 2 went to him. They almost exhausted him. Then the other one left, okay, and at times became the outlet to release, the outside runners. Thought Harry, apart from that, kicked late. I think one area of Harry's game, which I'm not going to criticise, is I reckon over the last, say, 2 years or so, he's really got rid of those sort of brain fade sort of moments in his game, and that was a mistake, that kick late, but I don't see that a hell of a lot, other than sometimes the kicking for goal, which he had last year. I don't see that in Harry's game. I think he genuinely makes really good decisions. You could see what he was trying to do. He was trying to be really aggressive, but it just wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't the right time. And it really opened it up for Collingwood, who was such a really good counter-attacking team, to rebound. It was just a really poor moment from Harry, but I thought he was super. 4 goals, dangerous. I think he beat Frampton. I like TDK's game again. He's hitting the scoreboard. He looks threatening in the air. He's mobile. I'm liking what he's doing at the moment. I really am. Whether the balance of having 2 rucks is viable, considering that we don't have a lot of speed in our game. Now, there's 2 types of speed. There's speed by foot, but there's also speed by ball movement. Almost appears like we haven't got both at the moment. Akers, busy, tried his ass off, made some blues, dropped an easy mark in the first quarter, which I think it would have resulted in a goal for us. It was dropped a chest mark. He's made some mistakes, but yeah, fucking hell, he can hold his head up pretty high. Blake Akers didn't stop trying. I mean, my boy, well, he's not my boy, but Sauce Bottle Orazio Fantasia, who must make the best tomato sauce going around for pasta. He's just stinking it up. And you live with those decisions. Voss has got a lot of faith in him. And if I hear all this bullshit about running patterns and doing this and doing that, and Jesus Christ, 5 disposals. I think he had 1 disposal at halftime. It's just not good enough. Walsh I think, once again, reflective. I mean, numbers are good. 8 clearances, 33 disposals. But if you stack his game up against Nick Dacos's, and that's essentially what you're doing here, because they're probably playing a similar type role. You just look at Dacos's game and how effective that was. He's hit the scoreboard. He just took ground. But Walsh's game was solid without being impactful. Durden, I actually saw some small signs that, his lead up, when he let up, which small forwards can do, and he took some marks on the lead, which resulted, as an outlet, was a positive, but didn't hit the scoreboard, didn't look threatening at all in our front half, and didn't lay a tackle for the night as a small forward. Probably not good enough. Elijah Hollands, serviceable again, didn't hit the scoreboard, but had some nice moments, set up some good goal assists early in the game. I'm reasonably happy with the way he's going at the moment. He's not the one, though, that's going to give us the speed in the midfield. I think he can give us the class in the midfield with his ball use, but not the speed and the power. Wiedering was superb for the whole night. I consider to be probably the most hardest working forward in the game, a big forward. That's my check. Frustrated for the whole night. Wiedering was tight on him. He was brave in the air. Didn't win a lot of the ball, but defensively he was outstanding. Newman, I think he's copped a bit, Nick Newman, with his game, but I thought he kept us in it. He was just felt like he was in everything. Whether he was behind the ball, filling that hole. Like a lot of our players made some mistakes, but he's laid 6 tackles and 32 touches. Picknett's had 33 outs and 15 touches, but I actually thought Darcy Cameron was the best ruckman in the game. And you look, I think those stats flatter Pitto. I really do. He's had 6 clearances, but I don't know whether that's a great game. Cunningham did some nice things, but need more. First game back. Hewitt just had an off night. I'm not getting fooled by 30 touches. He was caught about 3 or 4 times. He looked slow. Didn't First option, always the best option. If he was responsible for Dacos, it didn't work. Curnow, he's hit the scoreboard. I actually want to see him higher up the ground. Whether he's carrying something up at the moment, I'm not quite sure. His defensive pressure's not great, but if you are a tall forward and your role is to keep presenting and your role is to fly and to wrestle and you're getting hit, I mean, yeah, you'd love your bigs to be able to tackle, but it's just not Charlie's game. It really isn't. But he did some good things and was always dangerous. He was dangerous. I'm not buying into the Lewis Young hate. I just think he's a very limited footballer who did his role to the best of his ability. It's as simple as that. Boyd was excellent when he went on to Elliott. I thought he was great on Elliott in that second half when Williams went off. But yeah, are we robbing Peter to pay Paul with someone who's such a good user by foot? Has Boyd, how many of those lockdown defenders can we play? And is he just a lockdown defender? Because are we actually seeing his ability to rebound? Not just yet. Chincotta was really good on heel. Thought he stuck to his task for the whole night. I think that could be a good option to play on Pickett next week. I thought found some excellent form for Melbourne last night against Geelong. You can't ask much more from a small forward than 3 goals. And if that had been an opposition small forward to kick 3 goals, we would be going, who the fuck is on Matthew Owie? So I think that's a positive. And we just didn't see Matthew Cottrell enough. He was another one that got caught with the ball at a really important time by just trying to do a little bit too much and not having much awareness about him. Made some nice decisions early in the game, kicked a goal, a really important goal, mind you, that got us back into the game. And he is our clutch. He is our clutch in front of the big sticks. But you look at it, 9 disposals, played on the wing. For the whole night, pretty much played on the wing. We had Akers and Matthew Cottrell. And just didn't get involved in the game as much as possible. That's a 32-minute review, guys, of our 6-point loss to the Collingwood Football Club at the MCG, which puts us at the moment behind the 8 ball. Speak soon.